Okay, we have Mr. Luke with us here today, Luke Kuepfer. And Luke, so what are you thinking, Mr. Luke, about how we met in the many years? How many years ago did we meet each other?
I think I was 19, Sam, and you were one of those crazy Jesus fanatics that, for a kid growing up in a religious world, meeting you was a shot in the arm of spiritual adrenaline. I think that's the best way for me to describe it. And I remember getting a small pocket Bible because you carried a pocket Bible and getting into the Word like I had never gotten into before. I remember the Bible studies. I remember getting into prison ministry. And I tell people today, you were one of the most profound mentors in my life at a very critical stage in my spiritual development at age 19, when I needed to be basically rescued from religion and plugged into Jesus. So super good memories back in Alberta days when I was teaching school starting at age 19.
Wow, what I remember is I was good friends with your brother Tim, and he says, you got to go get my brother Luke from the airport. And he says, would you do that? And literally, I liked him so much, I figured, now who's this Luke guy? And I figured, you know what, nobody's going to replace Tim. Tim, he's right. Cool. And then I met you at the airport, and I figured, okay. And you and me went up to Sunshine ski slope, and we skied all day long. And what I remember, we was going up and down and up and down. And I was just talking like Jesus to you. And you looked over at me, we was in the chair, and you says, you really believe this Jesus stuff, don't you? And that was my memory. And then you come back, wow. And we spent a lot of time together. And what I'll say here is Mr. Luke taught our children in school, and we spent a lot of years together doing prisons in Montana. And where did we all go and doing prison ministry, Luke?
Locally there in Lethbridge as well, Sam, and working with Bill Wallers down there in Deer Lodge, Montana. Yeah. My favorite memory is the seminar we did at Deer Lodge, and it was a state penitentiary. We were back in there with convicted murderers, these guys, man, they had been set free. I mean, these guys were the real deal. And you were leading worship one day, but you wanted to play your harmonica. Yeah. And you had forgotten your neck harness that holds the harmonica right here. Yeah. So you said, Kuepfer, get up here. And I'm a whole lot shorter than you are. And you got a chair up there, got me to stand on the chair and put my arms over your shoulder and hold that harmonica. And of course, we had a lot of fun with that. I would go in and out with the harmonica, and you'd be,
chasing it with my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We brought the house down. Remember that? Yeah.
Great memories.
Yeah, I remember the high side, the medium, and the low side, and yeah, it was quite a time. And then we drove all the way home.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. I'll never forget that. And then I remember the day where you come. We was all in the shop, and Ben was there, and a lot of the hippies we was working with, and our local friends. And you says, "Hey, Sam, I'm going to China." And I says, "What?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I think we're going." I says, "Who's going?" He says, "Ben Wallner and I." And away you went to China. Tell us a little bit about your life in China, Luke.
Yeah,
what made you decide to go?
Yeah, back then it's crazy. In fact, I think I was living at your mom and your sister June's house at the time, and I wasn't the world's greatest school teacher, but I'm a type A, very driven type of person, and sitting in a classroom all the time was just too much for me. So I told the school board, I said, I'll come teach if you guys give me like a month off in the middle of the school year. So the first year I went down to Calvary Bible School in Arkansas. The second year, I'm trying to remember if that's the year I traveled with my dad and my friends to Central America. But the third year, my friend Jason had been saying, "Luke, come smuggle Bibles with me into China." And I was like, man, I'm going to go for all the wrong reasons. I'm going to go because of a sense of adventure. This thing of getting arrested by the cops, the adventure for I mean, it was for the gospel's sake. It was for the missionaries' cause, right? But I was afraid my ego was playing a much bigger role. And I was linking, everyone's going to go, oh man, you hear about Luke Kuepfer? He went to China to smuggle Bibles. Isn't that cool? And so, I was going through a real personal revival in my life at that time and just going, am I doing this for all the wrong reasons? And I wrestled and wrestled with that, Sam. And today when I look back, I think in a sense, the devil was using reverse psychology on me. He did not want me to go. And so he was kind of using this ego thing. And finally, I just said, you know what, Lord, I'm going to go. I'm going to commit to going. And I'm going to do it for your glory and let the ego just, take care of itself. And, it was on that trip that I met a guy by the name of Paul Hattaway. He went on to write The Heavenly Man, Operation China, a number of books. And he's another incredible mentor of mine, a good friend of mine. In fact, we've been on the phone a lot in the last few weeks together. And he's had such an impact with unreached people groups. And it was on that trip when I met Paul Hattaway, and he started talking about people who had never heard the name of Jesus before, entire tribes of people. That was brand new to me. And it was on that trip that God began to give me a vision. And that vision led to an organization. It led me to living in Asia for 10 years. My wife and I moved over there shortly after we got married. We had 2 children born in Asia. And, today my wife works for Prayercast and, raising up prayer for the nations. That set the trajectory of my life going on that trip. And I go back and I go, man, I was like flipping coins. Should I go? Should I not go? Is it my ego that's driving me? And I think about how my life could have changed or turned out so much differently had I not made that decision to go on that short-term trip where I met Hattaway. And I guess the rest is history, in terms of how, my life trajectory has been a lot about reaching unreached people groups.
Wow. I remember, you says, I got you onto Jesus, or God used me a bit. But when you went to China, I just figured, man, this guy is willing to risk everything. And what am I doing here? I'm supposed to be this Jesus person, but maybe I love my life way too much. I did sneak over there one time and smuggled some Bibles in and came back and, got to be in Beijing and 1,000 miles north there and got to see the wall and run around there. Then Luke, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I had a Canadian passport, and I've been arrested twice in China. I've been interrogated. The first time was for 4 days before they kicked us out of China. The second time, we had plastered this town with Jesus films and scripture tracts and Bibles and stuff all night long. It was way up in a Muslim city, way up in the Northwest. And then we got on the train, and we went I want to say 16 or 17 hours down the rails. Got off the train at 2:30 in the morning, and the cops were waiting for us. And man, were they ever ticked. That was the second time I was arrested. They slapped us around a little bit. They interrogated us, but it was nothing compared to what the underground believer goes through. My Canadian passport protected me like crazy. I have never suffered for the gospel like my brothers and sisters, behind the iron curtain or behind the bamboo curtain, as they call it in China. Yeah. I don't know anything about suffering. So it's amazing what your American or your Canadian passport can do for you.
Yeah. You got the whole country backing you. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Is that passport.
Yeah.
So then you spend quite a bit of time in China. You have connections. You've traveled to a lot of different countries, Luke. You've been in Tibet. You've been, tell us a few more other places you've been and what you got to do in Africa, as far as going over there after you did your latest study, and you got to mentor these guys that go out and start churches, or what do they do?
Yeah, again, it's all to the glory of God, Sam. I look back at my life and I say, man, how did God put me on this pathway? It's amazing. And it's all to His glory. I'm thrilled to be. Let me tell you a quick story. Before my wife and I moved to Asia, we read this book. It was one of those pop Christian books called Experiencing God. It had a burning bush on the front. It was by Henry Blackaby.
I remember
and
Henry,
in that book, and it was honestly, it was Christianity 101. It was nothing really deep, but he talked about the fact that God is at work in our world and we must join Him. Yeah. And that was such a foundational concept for Amy and I, because we lift up our eyes, we look at the fields, they're white for harvest, Jesus says. pray that the Lord of the harvest will send out laborers. And sometimes we become the answers to our own prayers. We lift up our eyes, we look at the fields, but the biggest thing in life is for us to join God where he's already at work. And that's been my life goal, is to see, where are you at work, God? And I'm going to join you. The problem with so many of us in Christianity is we want to build an organization. We want to build some kind of ministry. And then we want to say, hey, God, would you come and bless this thing?
Yes.
And he's like, what I'm already doing is already blessed. Would you come and join me? Right.
Yes.
And so I think that's really the tale of my life is really seeing where God's at work and then joining him. And part of that was joining a movement of training leaders to lead, love, and serve like Jesus. And a number of years ago, I went to Uganda. We began to work with a small group of leaders. I think the first year we had 17. The next year we're down to 12. But we poured into those guys. And those guys, and I think we had 2 women in that group as well, they went out and began to train other leaders who went out and trained other leaders, and they trained other leaders. In fact, in the countries of Cameroon, Uganda, and Liberia, my friend Fred and I, we only trained like 50 people. They went on to train over 6,000, and the number keeps growing. It's this concept of leading and loving and serving like Jesus did, where it's a discipleship model, right? We pour into the few, we go deep with the few to impact the many. And, the second year we went back to Uganda, they had like 30 some leaders in the room that they were going to train. One of those guys was a former imam, a guy that had started 5 different mosques, a Muslim that had come to know Jesus. And he was getting trained by the guys that we had trained. And we didn't train him. We trained those original 12 to 17 people there. And they trained the next group, and those group, it just had this multiplicative effect. And partly because, we were very intentional in having our material being very simple. We taught over a 4-year period. We kept adding another layer of teaching and training to our material. The first year was all about leading self. The next year was about leading another. The third year was about leading a team. And the fourth year, leading an organization. And we have coaching built into that. It's all based on the biblical text. It's after the model of Jesus and the disciples. You start with the heart, you impact the mind, and the actions are the outflow of all that. And everything's undergirded by disciplines or habits in our lives. And to the glory of God, these guys are taking Africa. We're delighted with what these guys are doing and training other leaders who are training leaders who are training leaders. And Paul got that with Timothy. You remember where he said, train faithful men who will train faithful men. And that's really the bottom line principle.
You know what I love, Luke? I love so much. When I met you at 19, I could have pushed you into an evil way. There was a time in my life where I influenced people the wrong way. And then that just keeps carrying on and carrying on and carrying on. One friend of mine that I influenced the wrong way, and I wasn't what I should be in life as much as I know today. And, he died sitting in a chair, and I'm just going, wow, Lord. But I got to tell him, I says, I went to him, I says, some of the things that I did when I was with you, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? You see what I'm saying? But I look at you, Luke, and because, you allowing me to have a little influence in your life, me being a little bit older, I say this all to the glory of God. You're meeting people I'll never meet, and it's like the person that was Spurgeon. I don't know which one of them it was. Someone found a tract. A guy gave a tract. This guy went on to influence millions of people. Jesus led 12. So to me, life is so simple when we go, the next person I meet, I'm going to do the best I can, influence them for Christ. Who knows where that person's going to go? And that goes on and on and on and never stops. On Judgment Day, what if Jesus comes up and says, Hofer, you figured you was just an old farmer and somebody who just skipped out of school. But you know what? There's a lot of souls in Africa, and here's the connections. You know what I mean? Not that we're glory hounds, but there is a reward to being faithful, and it's a great reward. And it is such a pleasure. And what I love, I'm thinking about a lot of folks want the preeminence. I just want to know I'm part of the action where Jesus is, where he's involved, where we can look at and say, yeah, we had a little part to do with that, and just look for them little pieces. And if I just tie your shoes, buddy, I'm happy,
Well, I'll tell you, Sam, when I go back to age 19, and what you may not know is that just before I moved, like I'm talking 3 or 4 days before I drove out at age 19 to become a school teacher, 3-4 days before that, I was at a large youth conference. And a big top dog in the church and the denomination that I was in came up to me, and because of the clothes that I was wearing, because of I guess I was too much in style, too many pleats in my pants or something like that. And I was in a very conservative denomination back then. But, he came up and just let me have it. And in fact, he said, I washed my hands of you. And he missed my heart, Sam. He never, my heart was going toward Jesus. I can honestly say at age 19, a mutual friend of ours was an evangelist, had come to my church in Ontario when I was 17. I was having a personal revival in my life, and that was building and growing. And this religious leader missed it completely,
Missed it completely.
And then when I came west and you took me under your wing and you shepherded me, you showed me that it's not about religion, it's about Jesus. And it's about getting to know the word of God. And it wasn't just a theory, it wasn't just a book. Yeah. It was the person of Jesus. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. John 1:1, right? Yeah. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. That's what you introduced me to. And my life has never been the same since, Sam. I got rescued from religion through you. You showed me the real deal.
Wow. There's no horns here. I don't feel any horns yet, Luke. But anyway, no, that is awesome. That is so awesome. Praise Jesus. So now, Luke, I really love what you're doing. You're going around, and I've got more into business. I found out all my life, people told me, Sam, you shouldn't do business. You shouldn't do business. You're an evangelist. You shouldn't do business. But I found I love sales. I love sales. And I started to really go after sales, but without a guilty conscience. I believe it's my purpose in life. And when I found sales, I found my purpose, whether it's the gospel, whether it's selling the products we sell, whether it's meeting people. I found I was a good connection, but I wasn't a data man. And so I connected myself with people who do the data. They take care of the fine print in that, and I meet the people. And then they tell me, now you step aside, we'll take it from here. And I love to be that connection. In fact, someone said to me, your real purpose in life, Sam, he says, God spoke to me, and it really connected with me. He says, you're a kingdom forerunner. In other words, you connect, and then other people, if you let them, they'll take it and they'll make it work. Because I'm not one for the fine details. You know what I'm saying? And that really gets me excited. And I figured, you know what better to do to serve the people who are right out front like you are, meeting the businesses. And so now tell us a little bit what you do in the business world as far as coaching business people.
Yeah, in fact, I was just in Mississippi a few days ago, flew down to work with a company called Provia. They're based out of Ohio, and they've got a plant down in Boonville, Mississippi. And I was basically working with their top team, the general manager of the plant, all the the top guy in the packing and shipping, the guys that run the plant. That basically 12 people, the top of HR, basically the management team. It's just a great group of people. And I did this presentation called The Art of Listening. And, because every executive, by the way, should be spending more time listening, because that's how you solve problems, right? You got to first seek to understand, then to be understood, said Mr. Stephen Covey in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The matter of listening, winning people's trust, where our country's at right now with all the rioting, with all the protesting. We're like ships passing each other in the night. Politically in our country, we're so polarized. No one's listening to each other. Everyone's upset and angry, and we've got to practice better listening. Well, in the business world, I do a number of things. The art of listening is what I did this week, and then I did some business coaching. Basically, I sit down one-on-one with each person, and we talk about whatever challenge they're facing right there in the business. But I also do a lot of training and coaching around serving leadership, team building, things that have to do with conflict resolution, life purpose. I do a business workshop on how do we work with the younger generation. We're Canadians, right, Sam? And so,
Yes.
Generation Z. Our
Yes.
American audience would say Generation Z. Gen Y, the millennials, and now the Generation Z or Z. They're coming into the workforce in droves, and they think differently. They act differently.
Totally think different. I can't
Yeah,
take for granted that they're in my mindset, because it's totally different, Luke.
that's right.
I've got to
So,
understand it.
So I'm trying to help business people understand, when you hire these people, how do you manage them? How do you actually, get them to be profitable in your company? So just a number of things that I come from a Christian perspective in business. So a lot of the companies that I work with are run by Christians, and they want that Christian perspective. So I've got free reign to talk about leading like Jesus. I bring the scriptures. This week in my Art of Listening presentation, I'm quoting from Proverbs. I'm teaching things from the biblical narrative. It's fantastic. And so I'm really blessed, Sam, to be in the business world and speak from a Christian perspective, because guess what? Christianity works. The word of God, it works.
Amen. I used to go around doing a lot of preaching, a lot of evangelistic meetings, trying to get people to try harder and try harder. And God used me in spite of my stupidity, in spite of my ignorance. God still used me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the thing I
good.
question is right now is, someone today said that we aren't fighting flesh and blood. We're fighting principalities, powers, rulers of wickedness. This is what it's all about. And I think too many times I've went in the flesh and fought against a human, instead of talk to me, what do you think's going on in the spiritual realm right now with the divisiveness of our country?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Sam. What is going on right now in our country? People are yelling and screaming and rioting and fighting violence with violence, never works, right? And it just ups the ante. And of course, we could go many different ways with this right now. But I think the biggest thing is, we just had up in Wisconsin at Camp Awana, our church here in Chicago. They manage a camp called Camp Awana. If you know the Awana Kids program for teaching kids scripture verses. So we were up there for an outdoor church service because of the social distancing and all the stuff related to COVID right now. And they had John McCann, who is the chaplain for the New Orleans Saints. If you know quarterback Drew Brees, I'm a big fan of Drew Brees. And his chaplain was speaking, and so my wife and I went up and we spoke with him before the service started, and he just had some really great insights. And I think the biggest thing for me as I reflect on all that I've been reading, listening to, and watching right now is that there's a lot of voices out there, and we're attacking people. We're not, as you suggested, seeing the spiritual dimension behind this. Satan has a heyday whenever there's chaos and division. And wherever there's disunity, and especially disunity in the church, it just gives him a huge inroad, right? And I, for one, believe that we need to agree to disagree agreeably. Yes. There are so many things that quite frankly, I've got opinions on. You take this recent thing with all the riots and the protests. I think we all agree that George Floyd was kneeled on for way too long, that was injustice, that was not right, that was horrible, that should have never happened. But because we've got this thing called a cell phone today, we can record, anytime something bad happens in our country, and we can flash it across the world, and it can be like, this is our problem everywhere. And the reality is, we know that probably 95% maybe even higher of our cops are not bad, right?
Are not bad. Amen.
We
Just
know
like
that,
our country folk. 95% of the people I meet are working good, hard
yeah,
working. I
you're right.
can't find somebody that isn't.
That's right. We've got a lot of great people, but the news media is blowing things way out of proportion.
Yes.
And there's some voices that are being listened to, and there's some voices that are not being listened to. And the media pushes a certain narrative, and I have to remind myself that I can't even. I get pretty upset with the media at times, quite frankly.
Yes.
But I have to realize there's a bigger agenda behind that that's driving that, and it's we're not against people, you know. And my answer, honestly, to the racism, the prejudice issue is for me to move the needle forward one relationship at a time. So
Move the needle
you know,
forward one relationship.
we have an African guy that preaches at our church. We're building a relationship with him. We have a Jamaican lady in our small group. You know, I listen to her. I hear her stories, and listen to her experiences. You know, I think right now is a good time, even though we might have, you know, some good things to say. Right now might not be the time for us to do a lot of speaking. It might be a really good time for us to do a lot of listening and just bearing the pain of people's experiences. And then letting some other voices that are, I mean, I hate to say it, but right now, some people of color have voices that are going to resonate more than my voice. And I'm aware of that. And so not that we have nothing to say. I just think that there are some voices like you take Shelby Steele, for example, or John M. Perkins. You know, there's some people in the civil rights movement, some people that are voices of reason that we need to be listening to. And, you know, John McCann, the chaplain of the New Orleans Saints, I thought he had some really good things to say. And so right now I want to have the posture of listening and learning and bearing some of the pain and experiences. But I would just say that there is another agenda out there that is actually taking advantage of all this and blowing things way out of proportion and basically painting all our police as really, really bad. I don't think that's actually true. I think there's a few bad eggs out there, and these injustices, what happened to Rodney King in the LA riots, that's got to stop. What Chauvin did up there in Minneapolis, that's got to stop. You know, again,
this is what I
go a lot of different ways this way, Sam. I don't know where else you want to talk
about. No, this is what I see. Knowing God is in control, we aren't frantic. So therefore, when the best thing we can do is calmly listen,
yeah,
we can do that from a relaxed format. But when we're desperate and we won't even stop to listen to somebody else's opinion.
Yeah.
So we're not desperate, okay? Here's what where I'd like to go with this, Luke. So give us your, how would you say, motto for the rest of your life. Like, what should we be thinking? What are you thinking? Okay. Are you thinking, I have found my purpose? See, I'm 61 going on 62. I feel I have found my purpose. My purpose in life is a kingdom forerunner to influence people, get them going, pray for them, and just support them.
Yeah, yeah. Just above my desk here, I've got a slogan on the wall. This is my life quote. It's the best is yet to come. It's not original with me, but the best is yet to come. And I'm a very forward-moving person, Sam. I'm always looking for, you know, what's coming in the future. In fact, every day when I wake up, I do three things. Two of those things happen before I roll out of bed. And the third thing is I go to the window and I look toward the east and I say, Jesus, are you coming today?
Yeah.
And Paul talks about how we are to purify ourselves with this hope that Jesus is coming again. I think sometimes I become so immersed in this world that I've got to keep myself purified with the best is yet to come. Jesus is the best reality there is. And the other two things that I do before I roll out of bed, Sam, every morning, and I've done this now for probably 3 months. This has been kind of a new discipline in my life since COVID started. But the first thing that I do is I work through the ABCs. And I think of attributes of God. So God, you are awesome. A is for awesome. And maybe tomorrow it'll be God, you're almighty, or
Yes.
I don't know what I'll come up with.
Yeah.
But you are the best thing that happened. B, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. D,
Yes.
you delivered me from evil. E,
Yes.
you are everything I need. And I work through all the ABCs all the way to Z. And I just proclaim the goodness of God. And then the last thing I do before I roll out is I think of 10 things that I'm thankful for. And I run those through my mind, and I just thank God, for my lovely wife. I thank God for my condo. I thank God for my health. I thank God, for the fan in my room. I thank God for the incredible time I had last night with my friends, or whatever comes to my mind. But I focus on gratefulness, Sam.
Amen. Amen. And you put that in this mind, then we can prove what's the good and acceptable and the perfect will of God. And we're happy. It's dangerous to be happy, Luke.
Exactly right, Sam. I was just telling my friend today, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy named Erwin McManus. He's one of my favorite preachers out of LA. He's from El Salvador. I was a missionary kid in El Salvador. Okay. I love to listen to Erwin McManus. I love his books. And Erwin once said, wouldn't it be cool if people came up to you and said, you know what? I can't stand Christianity. I can't stand the church. I can't stand all that you stand for, but you are making me nervous.
Yes.
Your life has been so transformed by Jesus. You are so full of life. You've got such a great marriage.
Yes.
You've got so much to live for. You've got so much joy and happiness in your life. You are making me nervous. I may have to reconsider what I believe because of who you are. Right?
Yes. Think about this, Luke. Think about this here. And we'll start closing her down. Psalms 40, he brought me out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, set my feet on a rock, put a new song in my heart, even a song of praise unto my God. Many shall see it and shall fear and shall put their trust in the Lord.
Yeah, wow.
That's powerful, bro. How do people get a hold of you for business?
So basically just my website, lukekuepfer.com. My last name is a really weird spelling. It's K-U-E. That's kite, umbrella, elephant. K-U-E. P as in Paul, F as in Frank, E-R. So K-U-E-P-F-E-R. So lukekuepfer.com is my business website. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. My email address is luke@lukekuepfer.com.
I want to say this to you, just man to man, Luke. You're a fighter. You're a soldier. You're a ranger. And you're not a casualty. Look up the Ranger's Creed that the Army uses. They don't leave any man behind. They care. They're real. They're dedicated. Their life don't count. The only thing that counts is being a ranger, being a soldier, being dedicated. And that's how we need to bring back for Christ. We need to bring the glory back that he deserves. We can't, but we need to try.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Thanks, Sam. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And I can't thank you enough for just the impact and influence you've had in my life. I go back to when I was 19, and not just 19, but I'm not quite 50 yet, but I've got another year, a little over a year to go yet. And, you call me faithfully, and you encourage me, you charge me. I'm not as faithful in calling you, but you have stuck by me. You have encouraged me. You've been an incredible cheerleader in my life. And I want to just thank you, Sam, personally for being an incredible example, a model of what it means to be a Christ follower. Thank you, Sam.
You're going to bring the tears, buddy. We better shut this down. Love you, man. Thank you.
I love you, brother.
Bless you.
You too.
Bye-bye.